Sit on the floor. I remember there was one time I was like, I am going to go and just sit on the floor in the room that my kids are in and just see what happens.
Mhm.
And they were all on top of me. I had 3 boys on top of me, but it was so like, they're just like, you're here, you're with us, you know? And so I still try to do that even now with all of my kids in all of the different stages. Welcome to the Homeschool Perspective, where seasoned homeschooling moms share tips, insights, and resources to empower your homeschool journey.
Hey there, we are so happy to have you with us today on the Homeschool Perspective. We're diving into a topic that is often overlooked, but absolutely essential: play. We'll be exploring what play really is, the different types of play, and why it is such a crucial part of life and education at every age and every stage. Whether your child is just learning to crawl or getting ready to graduate, play remains a vital tool for learning, growth, and connection. Join us as we unpack the power of play and how it can enrich your homeschool experience. So, y'all, let's jump in. What counts as play?
So much.
Like, okay, let's unpack that. There's a lot.
Yeah, for real.
I think that's where we miss it, right? Because we think of like our toddlers with blocks as playing, but when you get to older kids, what do you think play is?
You want to go?
You
You
know,
want to start, Allie?
yeah. Well,
I know we all have so much to say
where do
about
we
this.
start?
We're
I
all
know,
like
right?
sidestepping and like, you go first.
Trying to make space.
Yes.
So, okay, I think because I'm sure we're going to talk about this later. Play is actually important for adults too. And as I'm trying to, it's something that I'm personally trying to rediscover and make time for myself. I really think that play essentially is a time of immersive creativity, like where you are able to release the expectations or the systems or whatever you're doing and just immerse in something that allows you to be creative and enjoy. I think that's because the thing is, play is important for infants, for toddlers, all the way to teenagers and adults. Everybody needs it. And I think that when you boil it down, it's really about that immersive
Yeah.
creativity.
I
Immersive
like
creativity.
that.
I like that too. Yeah. Because there's so many branches of play, there's so many different types of play. And some of them are more creative than others. Like I think about playing board games. Like there's not as much creativity always. I mean, some are very creative. There are very creative, but there's this element of being immersed and you're coming into some other story, like when you're playing a board game. Even like I'm thinking about like Ticket to Ride. Okay, now all of a sudden you are immersed in, this lab, like this whole like maze of like getting your trains to this place, so you are immersing in that in board games and that type of play as well.
Yeah, I think that play can also be individual, right? So I
Yeah.
have kids that will play, young kids that will play with imagination things. Like they'll set up a village and have their Lego people go through it all on their own. But what I've noticed is my teenagers and even my young adults, they also play. It just doesn't it's not as easily recognizable.
Right.
But play for them is anything that brings them joy that isn't work.
Mhm.
And so for one, it might be learning a new knitting pattern or how to build a new piece of furniture, right? Like it could be these types of things, but they're playing, they're creating it was something that brings them joy.
Or even like competitions and having that like working towards a skill, or so it might be work, but it's fun to compete or it's fun to perform. So even though it's like this little bit of work that's having to go into it, it's because of that competitive nature to it. It makes it fun and it makes it play. So it looks different, but it still has those elements of play. What were you going to say, Allie?
I think it has a lot to do with personality because I think there are
Sure.
people where any level of competition takes them out of play.
Hmm.
Because once it's competition and somebody who has to win, but where it becomes where there's pressure involved in it. I think play and pressure really don't go well together. And when we look at but there are people and whole families where competition actually brings out the more playful side, right? And they have more fun and they can immerse even better. So I think there is a level of understanding people's personalities too, that some kinds of play might not work for everybody. Because I know, like, well, no, I'm pretty competitive, but in a fun way sometimes, and but it can really quickly be twisted into something that has pressure attached to it. And I think
Well, and
once the
that's what I
pressure
was
gets
thinking.
attached, you lose the benefit of
You
the play
do.
side.
But like as you're playing, like as you're think about preparing for, a competition with like speech or music or something that you've done in your past, there's like the preparing for it is fun. The prep work, like there is the work that goes into it, but oftentimes I feel like that's fun. And then as you get closer and closer to the competition, because you wouldn't be doing these things unless you liked it, right? Like in on some level. And so then I don't know, that's how it is for me in my, but as you get closer to the competition or the actual day of, then it's like buckle down. Okay, now it's not very much fun and playful anymore. Now we're working towards like this goal of like getting it done and doing the best and like, or it's like a sport and it's like going to your practice is fun, but then when you're really gearing up for the game or the meet or whatever, that's when the pressure's on and it's not as much play at that point, but you've had that opportunity to play to going into it. I guess that's how I was thinking of it. So I
No,
guess
I totally
yeah.
see how different personalities would perceive that differently. Because, like, even talking about like building up to a performance, the performance is play for me. It was all the build up, like the repetitive. There's something that feels so monotonous about rehearsals and things like that, but the actual perform, like, that's where my heart would like open up, and that was play, and I was
Yeah.
so immersed that like didn't even know what else is going on around me. Like when I do speaking engagements, the same thing. It's like pretty much everything leading up to it, to me, it doesn't feel like play.
So
But
it's
when
the
I'm up
opposite for
there, and
me.
it's the total opposite. But that's, I mean, it's an important thing, an important distinction. And the thing is, the thing that you guys know, I love research, but like the research on play, that what comes out of the other side of play is like better problem solving skills,
Mhm.
more creative thinking. You have more flexibility in being able to see things from other people's perspective, more empathy. There's so many things that come from it. So I think, it's that immersive, where whatever it is that helps you to fully immerse and enjoy, so that that back part of your brain is open, and you're getting those benefits of it. It's once we start layering on, uh, for most people, once you start layering on structure, um, and pressure, the ability to let that part of the brain be accessed starts to slowly shut down, and it becomes more effort driven. Do you guys think you can have that play has to do you think play can require effort?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
right? Okay, I
Yeah.
think so too.
Yeah. So, depending upon which childhood development specialist you listen to, play actually should require problem solving and effort of some point. Most agree that play involves physical, mental, social, and emotional engagement
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
different stages in play. And play becomes more subjective as kids get older. So, one could argue that children between the ages of 6 months and 2 years of age play similarly to each other. Kids will all have inclinations like this is like they like blocks or they like music, whatever. But the types of play that we do when children are learning
Very
to walk, to explore,
sensory.
are similar. But once a child passes kindergarten, early elementary, junior high, and high school, play becomes more and more subjective as they get older
Mm.
because we develop more personality as we age and as life experiences shape what we enjoy. Because again, depending upon who you listen to, play is pleasurable, right? So it brings us joy and it gives us pleasure, and that will be unique. Somebody who's an introvert might find quiet play more fun and
Mhm.
rewarding than an extroverted child who's like, I want 20 friends over and I want to organize a game and we're going to storm the castle and take over a village and build a
You've
fair,
been
right?
looking at my house because I have both of those kids and they don't think the other one is playing, or like at least
Of
Yes.
they don't
course.
think the
Yeah.
introvert is playing because he prefers to cook. Like that's what he does for play. He cooks and he makes up recipes and he creates books and he does, it's like he's doing his own version of play and
Yep.
my extroverted kids get on him and say, "You don't play. You don't ever play." He's like, yes, I do.
Do you
Anyway,
know one study showed that the average American child plays less than 8 hours a week right now?
I know.
What do you guys think about that? What do you think about the state of play?
it's sad. And I just want to scoop them all up and put them in I don't know,
Yeah.
in a
You wanna go
playground
put him
together.
in a field with a
Yeah.
couple balls and a bunch of kids and just be like,
Yes.
"Stay.
But also
Stay out there."
there's like an art station and like, like,
No, of course, but just like
like all the
yeah.
things. I just mean all the things. Like there's like, I just, I have, I think we're so good at giving our little ones opportunities to play. Be as a society preschool. I mean, and when I say preschool, sometimes that's even pre 3 years old. Because school oftentimes is happening and they're losing that play at 3 and they're, being forced to sit and learn, and it's like, no, they need to be playing, they need to be immersed. And even up to I've had families that have told me even with their middle schoolers, they're in middle school now, so they don't play anymore. And I'm like, what? Or high schoolers. I know, and they don't really play. And I think that it's a mindset shift too of not really understanding what play is and
Yeah.
what that looks like through the stages. And yeah, no, they're not, your middle schoolers and high schoolers aren't getting out their dolls anymore and they're not playing, in the same way, but they're doing other things that are so playful. And the parents, I think, need to recognize, first of all, the importance of that. And second, give space and time for those creative pursuits and those playful things that they
Like what?
could
Give
be
some
exploring.
examples.
So many, like, okay, so like, you
Even
already
though
mentioned like the knitting, doing stuff like that. But like my teen is really into Lego still. And his like Lego building has changed so much over for the years and it's becoming super creative. And like he's world building is what he's doing, and then even like the video games, like one of my kids is always in Minecraft and he is always building and creating like actual worlds in Minecraft. But we look and we see these creators that have done this like on if you go on YouTube and you look up like Minecraft worlds, people have like created these like all of like Tolkien's, everything, like in Minecraft. It's incredible. Or it's just amazing the different things that people have done, even adults. And we look at that and they're like, wow, they're so creative. They're playing. That's what play looks like as in these bridge years. So I don't know, like
and
those.
like I
Go
also
ahead,
think
honey.
of like, that we have every Wednesday we have the kids' friends over for dinner and like we end up with a gaggle
I love
and
that.
some of them are a little older and they're really into nail art or they're like where they're
Yes.
like learning to like paint. So it even, because a lot of play also, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of play mimics, it's play done that mimics adulthood, right? Like it's
Yes.
part of like stretching their minds to like prepare and go that way. So I think sometimes in these transition years, it also can look like they're almost playing at being adults, but they still have that like they're exploring. So like nail art and fashion design and taking shirts and ripping them apart and tie dye and all of that.
Mhm.
Puffy paint's not a thing anymore, but you remember that, like all of those
Bring it
things.
back.
Bedazzling.
Puffy paint's okay, but not glitter puffy paint. We're not doing that.
No. No glitter.
But I mean, there's also like, yes, there's like the technology side, but there's also a lot of, or like watching the tutorials on like doing horrible makeup. I mean, or, playing with their hair and doing like all
Yep.
of that can be play.
Yep.
That mimicry, it's that fully immersive, trying creative things.
Another
I
thing
think
that I
those can be
always
it.
encourage parents of teens to talk or to think about is ways that they're setting their kids up to play with younger kids. Because then they take in on this leadership role. Babysitting is a great example of
Yeah.
being playful. Like, you're getting paid for it too. And now your kids are getting paid and they're playing because they're having to be creative and they're having to think like those younger kids and create things that are
And well
fun.
socialized,
Yes, yes.
right?
Mhm.
So I know, I mean, like my son is just like me, my 13-year-old. He is just like me as a kid. And that's like how I played all through high school was when I was babysitting. And we have people come over every Sunday night from our church and we have a small group and there's a lot of kids and he's the one of the oldest kids and he's out in the backyard. He's organizing Nerf wars, he's organizing capture the flag things. He's organizing like all of this stuff with all of these younger kids and they're having a blast. And he's getting that play, the benefits of play, but he's also learning leadership skills and just so much in addition to it that, is a great way for him to do that. And then teaching kids too, younger kids, teaching kids a skill that they already that they have that they're one step ahead of. So for me, when I was a teen, I was teaching younger kids music lessons. I started, I mean, this is how I ended up becoming a music teacher. But I started taking on like I had parents that were paying me to teach their kids how to play the flute, and I was like, okay, I'm okay. But it was very playful because I didn't know what I was doing. I was making it up as I went along. I became a swim teacher and I started to teach swim. And that was very playful and very fun. Because again, I had to think like little kids and I had to incorporate that. So there's ways that you can even like get, your kids can get paid for playing. And I'm like, yes, find those, find those things because that's just so fun and they can start to see how things that make them unique and things that they're interested in can shape them into adulthood and they can have fun jobs that they enjoy doing um as adults.
Well, and one thing I
Yeah.
like about what you're saying there is like even if you have only children, these types of play, the
Mm, yeah.
babysitting, the social interactions, that
Yes.
still makes play possible. Because I know back when we had only one kid, I was like, how do I play with this kid all the time? Like, what's this? Because I was an only child. But thinking back, I played with the kids in the neighborhood. I played with the kids at church. I played with, kids when I went to a park. Like, you just make friends, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that you said before, I'd love to circle back to, you talked about Minecraft and things like that as play. And I know that this is a hot topic
Mm,
in a lot of homes. Do you consider sitting on a screen play?
hmm I do. Allie, do you?
Okay.
I
This
think
is
it depends.
something
So I will say it
well,
does depend, but you go ahead.
I think that so this is a constant conversation in our home. My husband grew up playing video games, loves video games. I never was very interested in those kinds of things. I remember my grandmother one year like got us all Nintendo, the ones you hold, or
Game
not
Boys.
Nintendo. Thank you, Game Boy. Okay, so she like got them all for, I don't even remember the name. That's awful. Anyway, but she got them all for us, and I remember like looking around at my cousins at the end of Christmas Eve, and like everyone was just do, right, and
Mhm.
so I never, it never clicked with me, right? Like I never got that into it. My husband was really into it and grew up like yeah, very into it. And he plays video games. He also plays sports. He does lots. He's a cool guy. But it's something that was a big part of his play growing up, and he still enjoys it. Like he still enjoys playing. So when it came time for kids, I was like, no, like I don't want like 10 years old at minimum before they even touch a video game, all of that stuff. I lost that battle hardcore. We did not, that's not what happened. And my daughter will play occasionally. We have very strict parameters. They're only allowed to play for a couple of hours on Saturday, unless there's like a special reason. I think it's hard because like it's so designed to suck your brain completely in. And it is very directed play. Now, not like Minecraft, but like most video games are still very directed. So to be so much candy for the brain, right? To make the brain so invested, so excited, so much adrenaline and all the dopamine coming at you, and not to be moving your body, not to have that hand-eye coordination happening, not to But then at the same time, sorry, I'm talking in circles because then it's also like they have to solve puzzles to do things. So I think it's been such a hard, like a tightrope that we've walked on as a family. And so we do it, we allow it, but within very tight parameters because it's really important to me that we balance it with, like I have a kiddo who would do that all the time.
Mhm.
Like he would never leave. That would be his thing. That would be his world. And he could probably find an entire community in there. But we've just decided that and pushed a lot by me that I want more of a balanced approach to play and have more of those physical movements, more other things going on.
Mhm.
I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with this. It's like, and
I think
sometimes I let it go and let him have a little more, and then I freak out and I'm like, no, 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 pull it back. It's like, I don't know. It's such a hard
So
thing because it's built to be so addictive to your brain.
yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. That the undeniable truth is that technology is like the technological play that our kids are engaging with has literally been designed with entrapment in mind.
Yeah.
How can we trap your kid and keep them here? However, it is also undeniable that our kids are growing up in an unprecedented era and their futures will almost assuredly involve some form of technological skills. They
Right.
will need them. So where is the balance? And when I look at it this way, for our family, what we've done is we limit screen time severely. Under 2 years old, no screens. Like
Mhm.
not at all. We don't they don't even watch movies together. We watch movies after babies go to bed. Like that's
Mhm.
that. Under two, no way. From 2 to 5, 20 minutes a day, except for our weekly family movie night. And then they could watch then. 5 and older, I still limit it during the school week.
Mhm.
We read books. My exception would be because it's on a screen, an audiobook. So my kids are often sitting around the fireplace or in our den, on chairs with Alexa reading them the most recent audiobook we've purchased or whatever. They're
Mhm.
making their way through the Boxcar Children's series right
I
now.
love that. That's a good
And
one.
often my son
For
will be
real
sitting
owns.
there crocheting. He's working on crocheting a big ball right now. And my daughter will be building Legos and they'll be listening to the books. And I like that so much more. But once a week, they get to play Minecraft for 30 to 40 minutes a piece because they also watch each other play. So it's like a huge amount of time because we have 8 kids, right? So like there's a
Yeah.
lot of and only 3 or 4 of them are playing Minecraft, but still that's, 2 hours staring at the screen. And what I notice is after that, they're not as eager to play independently. They are desiring to be entertained by me as opposed to happily playing with each other. So we actually have to strategically plan when we have that screen time. And people told me a long time ago, that's because you limit it. When we had it more, we had more meltdowns, we had poorer sleep quality, we had less interest in school, less individual desire to play. And so I'm really in the school of we give them more as they get older and can handle it, but I want their brains to develop without it because
Yeah.
the neuroscience that is accessible today, the studies that are available right now are telling me that I don't want my kids raised staring at screens.
Yeah. We I think we do more screens than both of you. My husband also plays video games. I never was really that into it as a kid growing up, although we had gaming systems and stuff and I played, but it was easier for me just to put it down and do other things. But my kids play, they have some time set aside every day that they can play. But we do monitor it and limit. It's not a free for all. They get more time on the weekends, but they play with their friends on there. They'll get on. Even I think this is silly though. The way that it's set up is that you can't play like in the same room as your friend. So my child's friend who lives across the street will come over after school and be like, "Hey, let's get on," and then he'll go back home, and then they both get on online and play together. And I'm like, that's weird. That's just weird. But whatever. Then they have things to talk about and then they have things to it for my kids, and it wouldn't be the same, I don't think, for all kids, is that gives them some material to go and have some other creative play with. Like they're out there playing, the games and the things that they're playing online.
Mhm.
They take those offline and they play with those in some various form, either through Lego or through just like running around, playing outside. And it enhances their other play. Now, of course, it gets out of hand and it gets to be too much, and we start noticing behavioral things, and we start noticing like a lack of interest in other things. And that's when we'll kind of rein it in and give more, like stricter parameters around that. But it's something that my kids play with their dad, and like they all go do that, and it gives me a minute to like, because I don't care. I'm like, you all go play those video games. I'll just be down here by myself.
Okay, but
Don't mind me.
that's an important distinction
It
because
is.
play
Yeah,
gives
playing with
parents a chance to have a break, right? When our kids go play,
Yep.
then we get to breathe, we get to rest, we get to think, we get to regroup, we get to accomplish.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just assume that this is relatable to everybody other than just me, but maybe not. But, there's sometimes that child that always wants you to play with them and you to entertain them. Again, maybe it's just our home, but, what would you say to the mom who has a kid like that? Or no, really, what would you say?
Asking as a general
Asking for a
question. Yeah.
So I've had that in the past. We actually have a different situation happening right now where my youngest always wants my daughter to be the one to play.
Mm.
And she's getting to an age where she's outgrowing the type of play that he wants. And so that's been a different thing to navigate. But when we had that happen, I started including them, like having them come play with mommy while I was cooking and while I was like doing things like that. Um, that still for them can be play. And then
Mhm.
I would set them up with activities. Like it would be like, I love there's a homegrown preschooler. Your natural learner has these too, but they're like play setups that you can do. Like we would build a tower and tie a ball to the top and then, okay, see if you can knock this over, see if you can build. And then I would start pulling, like I would be like, okay, mommy's going to go do this. And I would just set them up with something. And once they got started, they were able to keep going. That's how I worked on that with my kiddo who was like, but mommy, but mommy, but mommy.
Mhm.
Now, though, I have a kiddo doing that to another kiddo. And the other kiddo is like, I don't want to play with you right now. Like, I don't want to do that right now. And that's been a really interesting thing to navigate because she doesn't have to do that all the time, right? Like, she's not responsible for being his sole playmate.
Entertainer.
Yeah, but we also need to be kind and helpful, and so that's been really interesting. So I'm trying to do the same things. But yeah, it's been interesting to see when it shifted to a sibling.
Yeah. Well, and I think also like I like what you said about involving your kids in what you're doing because it's playful for them. I know we've talked about this before. There was a study that I can't remember who did it. I know Allie probably knows, but where you're doing the chores with the young kids and giving kids the chores to do because it's playful for them, like giving your kids like like a sink full of bubbly water and having them wash dishes. Like that is so fun. Plus they're getting all of that sensory play. They're in the kitchen with you and you're setting them up to contribute to the family by doing something helpful. My daughter loves washing dishes and it gets really messy, but then I mop the floor. It's like a win-win. You just go back
Yeah.
in, mop up after them. The floor gets cleaned. You know what
So
I'm
it's all
talking about?
in. Yeah.
That
Yep.
study.
There's a book on that too that
Yes.
I'm trying to think of the name of.
It was
It'll
South
come to me.
America.
Well, they highlight South America and Sweden and like a couple of
Okay.
different places. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
We
Sorry
might
to
put
put
it
you
in
on the
the show
spot.
notes. We'll put
Yeah.
it in the show notes. Yeah. Uh,
But
it's
it's just
true though.
another
Like that is fun and playful.
yeah.
That occurred to me though. I used to, when I was doing stuff in the kitchen, I used to get a big tub with water and soap in it. And then I'd give them toys to give baths to. And I would lay out tons of towels and it was this huge setup. And I still do that sometimes. But it was like, wait a minute. I'm over here with a tub of soap and bubbles doing dishes, having them use a tub of soap and bubbles on the floor that I had to set up and do all this stuff for.
Mhm.
So it's like, by the third kid, I was like, come over here, play with
Yeah.
these
Do
bubbles,
the actual dishes.
Well, and
instead of like setting up the whole playscape every time.
Right. Yeah.
that's like Mary Poppins parenting right there, right? Like it becomes a game and it's fun and that's
Oh, I
play.
love that.
And we don't think about that as play, but think about the life skills that our kids are learning when they help us. We used to have competitions to see who could pair the most socks.
Mm.
And our kids would tell you it was the sock pairing competition and it was a game.
Mm-hmm.
They never considered it work, but in a family of 10 people, the sock basket gets big. We've since come up with better systems, but I remember like we would sit
System
there.
is no socks.
Yeah, we
Our
don't need
system is
socks. We're
everybody gets
sandals all
a
the time.
different color or different brand.
There you go.
So
banned the
no,
socks.
like if they look the same, they all belong to the same person. Everybody gets the same type of sock.
Okay.
So like somebody has all black socks that are Hanes and somebody else has all white socks that are Hanes and somebody has all those striped socks and somebody has all neon socks.
That's great. Yeah, you need a system for socks. Every family needs that's just a
It
side
took
note for
years
this
to get
episode.
there.
Everybody needs a side note for socks. A system
System
for
for
socks.
socks.
But before that, we would pair socks together and we would make it fun. And then we would play basketball and throw them into each person's basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was like we gamified chores together, but we were playing together.
Mm-hmm.
So play is not an exception from work, right? Play is not an exemption from learning. They can work together. And I love, was it Mr. Rogers that said that the job
Yeah.
of the child is play?
Yep.
Something like
Play
that.
is the work of childhood.
Yeah.
That was
I love that.
I don't know if it was Mr. Rogers,
Piaget.
Was it?
but there you go.
I think that was
Mr. Rogers has a really good quote on play too, though.
He talked.
Yeah.
Well, he
He
said
talks
that
a lot
too.
about play.
Like he said the same thing.
Okay.
You know what though, you guys? I'm thinking because I've had this happen, so now I'm going to be the one that's I hope
Play is
I'm
often
not
talked about as if it were relief
on
from
it.
serious learning, but it is serious learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's
Yes.
Mr.
That's what it
Rogers,
is.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Mr. Rogers. Play is the work of childhood is Piaget.
They're
There we
both
go.
on my wall. I had to like zoom in
You
and
just had to
see
turn
who,
around.
who said what.
Okay, but have you guys as adults, because this is still like thinking of like, hey, these bubbles could be play, or let's throw these socks in like basketball. That is still, as an adult, being able to access a playful part of yourself. And I don't know about you guys, but like there have been a lot of times, and this is why I'm genuinely like making an effort to work on playing for myself, where
Mhm.
that's blocked for me. And I
Mm.
think that's something that happens. So, okay, I think like Lisa's face, I'm like, okay, I think this is a thing though for people that if you grew up if you had to grow up really fast, or if you are carrying a heavy load, there's this underlying current in our society that play is frivolous, right? Like schools play is frivolous. It's, it's pass the test, it's do the things, it's the way we work in the United States and how often we take breaks, like all of that. Play is in the subconscious of our culture, play is deemed a frivolous activity.
Right.
And everyone is doing so much that I think
Goofing off.
sometimes, yeah.
Not
that I
playing,
think
goofing off. It's
sometimes-
negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
that's why
think
we see
that
our teens
sometimes-
waning so
Yep,
early because we're
they're
forcing.
mimicking adulthood.
Yep.
And if
They're
adulthood has
playing
no
adults.
play, and
They're
if
playing
adulthood has no
boring
play,
adults.
but I also have so much compassion for a parent who's listening to this and they go, yes, I understand the research. Yes, I want that. But how, like that, even throwing those socks like basketball or letting the toddler play in the bubbles, it's going to splash. That that actually causes a lot of anxiety because it's like, first off, I've got to think of a play and they've got that part of themselves blocked off. And then like as they're doing this, someone's going to get hit with a sock. Someone, things happen.
Yeah.
And but I think this is a really big issue. I think this is a really big blockade for a lot of families to access the benefit of play, that we have been so cut off from it and that we are so tightly wound that it feels almost impossible to become that person. So what would you say? Because this is like, I know talking to families that I've worked with and coached, and then even I've had seasons like this too, where even if I did like intentionally say, okay, we're going to do this, when we're doing laundry this weekend, I'm going to be fun and we're going to do this, right?
Mm.
And then you get in there and it's overwhelming. It's stressful. like you can't let yourself rest in the play. What would you say to parents? Because I think that's a really real thing for a lot of families right now.
Yeah. I think
I
it's
think
hard to think of those things in the moment often, to think of things like, okay, I'm going to make laundry playful today. Like, I just need to get the laundry done, you know? So I don't know. I think if these were the first steps, I would say separate it. I would say intentionally start small with something that you can do intentionally playful. Play a board game with your family and just like get through it. You know what I mean? Like, just like one thing, even if, because it's hard. I mean, have you guys ever had a hard time sitting down and playing a board game with your kids? Like,
Yes.
it's like, yeah, like I mean, I used to, have a hard time sitting down. My kids, they always want you to play with their guys, whatever they are, the
Uh-huh.
whatever the guys are right now. Like they were Star Wars guys, they were like the pirates. I
Mhm.
had to sit down and play guys with my kids. And I always did it wrong. Like you never do it right. So it's like, no, 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 mommy. No, no, no. Your guy does this. I was like, oh, okay. And then it's like, I'm falling asleep. I'm like, what is my guy supposed to do now? Like it's no play for me. It's his play, but I'm holding it. So it's like, you have to start small and think like, what can I do that might be enjoyable for me and everybody else? Just that one little salt. And maybe it is like bubbles for your kids, like in the doing dishes. Like maybe you can think of something like that. But it's like those small little things that you can think of, whatever you can think of. And I don't know how we think of those things. How do we spark that? How do we spark that if we've lost it? How do we spark that playful spirit if we've lost it?
Naturally playful, I had to learn how to play.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm writing a book on play right now, and it's so interesting because I'm thinking, yeah, this was hard for me. Like, and as I'm reading these studies, they're like, just do what comes easy, or these books as I'm doing research, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, clearly you are writing to somebody that does not think like me, does not have my
Yeah.
personality. So, as you're asking this question, I'm going, it totally depends on the mom. So when my
Mm.
kids were little, I made it a goal and I set a timer on my phone because play felt interminably long and painful to me. Like I feel awful saying that, but it did.
It
And
is
I would
But
think
I
it had
true.
think
been
other
like,
people feel that.
It's so true.
I would think it
Yeah.
had been like half an hour, but it had only been like 3.5 minutes.
Mm.
So I learned to set a 15-minute timer on my phone. And I would sit on the floor and I made a mental commitment to myself to do whatever my daughter wanted me to do. And I would react to her cues. So I wasn't brainstorming. I wasn't suggesting. I would just sit down in the room where she had waffle blocks and Duplos and baby dolls and stuffed animals and whatever. And whatever she brought to me, I would say, oh, tell me about it. And I would ask questions. I would laugh. I would put on music and say, dance for me. And so I was actually a very passive participant. This
Mm.
was my first kid.
Mhm.
And I knew play was important. I knew what the science said. I knew I needed to do it, but I didn't know how. So that was how I started out playing with her. And then all of a sudden we had two kids, and my son is a lot more like me in temperament than my daughter. She's a lot like her dad. And so all of a sudden here comes this kid that's really easy for me to play with because all he wants to do is look at a book next to me while I read my book. And I'm like, I am here for that.
Yeah. Were you a
Like
little disappointed though that they didn't play together more? Because
they
I
got no, they do that
they
too though,
do.
but they would
Okay.
take breaks. They play with
Mine.
each other and then they take breaks, but as far as like the interaction with me playing with them,
Okay. Okay.
that's all it took. And then my aunt taught them to play Uno, and I thought they were too little.
Mm.
Like they were not quite 2 and 4. And I did not think they would get it, but they did. I mean, we started with just color matching and then they learned the other cards, right? But I'm like, okay, I can play this for 15 minutes a day. And that was all I asked of myself. Because here's the thing, connected parenting is not about always being connected to your kid, it's connecting when you're together and it's time to connect,
Mm.
right? It doesn't mean that 24 hours a day you're co-sleeping, you're showering together, you know what I mean? Like you're eating the same foods. It's like not that. Being connected to your kids is making eye contact, it's hearing what they're saying, it's putting the phone in another room for that
Mhm.
time that you're present, and just being together when you're together. And that's what I learned. And then I learned that we could go for a nature walk and it was play for them, because they were picking up acorns and showing them to me and grabbing leaves. And I was like, oh, tell me a story about that. Or I would, tell them the story of like Squirrel Nutkin that I was remembering or whatever. And so I learned to play with my children. It wasn't natural. And now that I have older kids, I'm realizing we've picked family games. So we have this game that's, believe it or not, we found it on TikTok. And depending upon what brand you buy, it has a different name. It's chain chess or triangle chess, but it's rubber bands on a board and you make triangles. And we will play that. And I love it because you can play two people and there's an ending point. So I can actually play it with 5 kids, like we have like a tournament and we each play, but it's a finite amount of time and it's playing. And it's something that we can all do, even though we have different temperaments. And so play looks different. I have another kid that we cook together, and for him, that's playing. And so you just kind of, it's okay if you're not like that, let's get out Monopoly and play board games all night long, mom. So, if play isn't natural for you, you don't have to force yourself to do something. You can find things and let your kids take the lead. And, we talk about like having to play because we know that it's important developmentally. And yes, there's pretend play and sensory play and imaginative play and all these types of play. But at the end of the day, play is connection based. It's connecting with your kids. It's doing something that you enjoy with them and that they enjoy with you. But it doesn't mean that you have to, and this is what I've learned. It doesn't mean I have to enjoy the activity. It means that I enjoy that I'm doing it with them. Right? Like I would rather go to the dentist than play Monopoly, but I love how happy my kids get when I play Monopoly with them. It might only happen like once a year because I really hate Monopoly. But, it's that I enjoy being with them. Do I enjoy building Legos? It's not my favorite thing. I got to tell you, stepping on those suckers hurts. But I love seeing my kids light up and explain things. And, I learned how to build an airplane the other day with rotors. That was really cool.
Yeah. One thing that you said that I think is such a great first step, like the first thing, go, like you said, sit on the floor.
Yeah, that was it for me.
Sit on the floor. I remember there was one time I was like, I am going to go and just sit on the floor in the room that my kids are in and just see what happens. And they were all on top of me. I had 3 boys. I was pregnant with Isla and I had 3 boys on top of me. And I have this really cute picture of like them on top of me. And I just, what happens when mommy sits on the floor. But it was so like, they're just like, you're here, you're with us, And so I still try to do that even now with all of my kids and all of the different stages that they're in. So like for my oldest, sometimes I just go in and he's in his room, he's just like doing Lego or he's doing whatever, and I go sit on his bed. And then it all of that connection. He's like, let me show you what I'm working on. Let me show you what I did. Let me show you what I did. And he's pulling me in and, and he's just doing he's pulling me into his world of play still. Like we're not playing pirates anymore, but he's showing me what he is interested in and we're having that connection. Or if he's downstairs and I sit down, he's like, you want to play a game? Or do you want to do that? Just sit. Just if you need that first step, sit on the floor or whatever. Just sit and be with your kids because it is about that connection. And they do want to be with you and doing things like the nature walk and the sitting and playing, with your, just all of that. Yes, yes, yes. I loved it. I love that.
Yeah, you hit it. It's just being present in their world. Like play is stepping into so I think we touched on independent play with peers, play with parents. Are we missing any categories here?
I don't know. We talked about so much.
We talked about it.
I think we covered the main ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody listening has questions about this that we didn't cover, drop them below and we'll definitely circle back around.
Yeah.
But Allie, Rachel, what are your favorite takeaways from today's conversation about play?
Just the importance of it all together, like the importance of you being present with them in their play, the importance of letting them go and play, the importance of letting them play with other kids, older, younger, same age, online, offline. All of that is play. And I think the biggest takeaway is keep your kids playing. Do whatever you can to keep your kids playing because it is so, so important for their development, for them to grow up to be awesome, like people, like just to, like as they're developing into adults, like you want them to have that, the play. And so keeping that throughout the years, even though it changes, recognizing how it changes, that it's changing, and keep providing opportunities for them to be able to play. Don't suck it out of the joy away.
I love
What would
that.
you say?
I think really it's so easy for these things that we know that are so good for us, so good for our children to become stressors. And
Mhm.
I love that you both pointed out that you can just sit or you can just set a time, like that we don't need to make this an additional burden or stressor on ourselves. This is actually a way to alleviate stress and
Mhm.
burden and pressure, not only for our children, which is a massive part of this. The kids who aren't playing, that 8 hours a day is correlating to significant mental health anguish and struggle, and adults too. Like this doesn't need to be a source of stress. This can be the way to alleviate it. And so I love that you guys talk specifically about simple, peaceful ways to integrate this. And I think just remembering that the value comes in the release of stress that happens through play.
Absolutely. So, everybody, thank you for joining us for this topic of play. We hope you have fun playing with your kids this week, whether it means sitting on the floor, pulling out a board game, or doing something else entirely to step into their world. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode and have a great week.